Chapter 15, the autonomic nervous system. So the student learning outcomes for this chapter, it's a continuation of the nervous system that we studied in ANP1. And we are going to compare the somatic nervous system that we studied last semester with autonomic nervous system. And under autonomic nervous system, there are 3 divisions. We are going to pay attention to 2 of the most important ones, which is the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. We'll study its anatomy and physiology. We will also study the neurotransmitters that are associated with each one of them. The most important the importance of our class today is most of our drugs, for drug discovery, we have to know the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Several drugs that we currently use can either speed up the nervous system or slow it down, or it can interact with neurotransmitters or receptors. So the implication or the importance of this chapter is drugs. And we'll also understand the concept of dual innervation. So this PowerPoint is in Blackboard. So if you take the central nervous system, we know it's made of the brain and the spinal cord. And all the nerves that enter into the central nervous system are through the peripheral nervous system. So all the message that is going to come into the brain and the spinal cord is called sensory or afferent division. Afferent, arriving at the brain. Sensory or afferent division. So this is the information that is entering the brain. And then the brain processes that information through interneurons, and it's going to send out the information. So the message that is going to leave the brain is called motor or afferent division. In sensory division, we have both somatic, somatosensory, which is through your skin, like touch receptors, pain receptors, vibrations, temperature, proprioception. So these are all somatic sensory afferent division. Viscera means body organs, the viscera of your body, like your liver and spleen. So these receptors are usually stretch receptors or pain and chemical receptors. So these are the visceral sensory. Our focus today, however, is in the motor afferent division. So here you can see in the motor afferent division, we have the somatic motor. We covered this last semester. So this is how the nerves from the skeletal muscles, this is how the muscles are controlled. So that's why it's called somatic motor. Soma means body, skeletal muscles. And we also have visceral motor. So this is innervation of the viscera of your body. And this is where you have the autonomic nervous system. So you kindly understand the organization as to where the autonomic nervous system fits into the nervous system. So the autonomic nervous system is part of the afferent motor division. And it's the division that controls your internal organs. Innervation means for the nerve to enter into an organ. So it's going to control your smooth muscles, usually your GI tract, your heart, most of your glands. So this is involuntary. You can't control this. Whereas your muscles, you can control. All right away, you can see the main differences between how the nerves innervate in the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. So here, when we study the somatic nervous system, the message, if you remember, there was this hand, the finger was touching the flame. So the receptors are picking up that stimuli, and then it is going to shoot. If it's a spinal reflex, it's going to go to the spinal cord. And then the brain will process the information, and then the information comes out through the efferent or the motor, and then it will ask the finger to move away from the flame. So here you can see that there are only 2 neurons. See, there are only 2 neurons. It's a 2 neuron pathway in the efferent division. Only 2 neurons. Whereas if you take the autonomic, there are 3 neurons. 1 neuron coming to the spinal cord, 2nd neuron, and this is the ganglia. A ganglia is a group of cell bodies outside of the nervous system. And then you have another neuron. So here there is only 1 neuron going to the target or the effector cell. Here we are seeing 2 neurons from the central nervous system. And the target cell or the effector cell is either smooth muscle like your GI tract, it can be your endocrine glands, it can be your heart, or it can also be your fat cells. Because there are 2 neurons, and the ganglion is right here where synapses is going to happen, we have the preganglionic neuron and the postganglionic neuron. The preganglionic neurons are from the central nervous system to the ganglia, and the postganglionic neurons are from the ganglion to the target or effector organ. When we say effector organ, that means the organ which is going to change in response to the synapse. So this slide is showing the difference between the somatic nervous system you studied last semester and the autonomic nervous system that you're going to study now. So we studied how skeletal muscles are contracted by the somatic nervous system. It is under our conscious control. It doesn't affect a long-term survival. And it controls the skeletal muscle. And if you remember, the neurotransmitter that we studied was acetylcholine, ACH. The autonomic nervous system that we are going to master now, it operates under subconscious control. You can't control it. You can't control how fast your heart beats. You cannot control digestion. You cannot control your endocrine glands. So it is subconscious. The autonomic nervous system controls your visceral effectors. Viscera means all your internal organs, like your spleen and liver and lungs and your intestines that you can't control. They coordinate life-giving function, like your cardiovascular system, your respiratory system, your digestive, urinary, reproductive system. So that is why this is very, very important. And that is why this plays a huge role in pharmacology. You know, that there are drugs that can either be an agonist or an antagonist to the neurotransmitters and receptors that play a role here. This is one of the most important chapters in the textbook, because all the drugs somehow affect the autonomic nervous system. So there are 3 divisions in the autonomic nervous system: sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric. Enteric nervous system is the nervous system of your GI tract, gastrointestinal tract. We will touch upon this when we study the digestive system. Because see, we have a very long GI tract, 25 feet. So it's too hard for the brain to monitor every inch of that tract. So it has its own nervous system. So as I told you, the sympathetic and the parasympathetic are going to coordinate life-giving systems like your cardiovascular, your respiratory, digestive, urinary, and reproductive. They will play a huge role in the homeostasis of your body, the water balance in your body, the electrolytes, the nutrient, and the gas exchange in the cells. They will play a role in processing sensory data from special receptors from your internal organs in your body and how to respond to them. It is involuntary. Your conscious mind is not involved in it. All internal organs will have both sympathetic innervation and parasympathetic innervation. It is called dual innervation. It's like yin and yang. If one nerve is going to speed up the activity of the organ, there's another nerve that is going to calm it down. It's like a yin and yang, the Chinese philosophy. So now this is very important for maintaining homeostasis and balance in our body. So this slide is kind of talking about the function of the autonomic nervous system and the 3 different divisions. As I told you, we have the sympathetic, parasympathetic, and enteric. Enteric nervous system is the sensory and motor and interneurons that are found in the GI tract. GI tract is the tube that goes from your mouth to the anus, your esophagus, your stomach, your large intestine, small intestine, and so forth. So the enteric nervous system will coordinate the activities of digestion and absorption. And it can continue doing its function without the action of the central nervous system. All right, let's talk about what sympathetic nervous system is. You probably all heard sympathetic nervous system is also called as the fight or flight response. And this is the response that kicks in during fear, during stress, exertion, arousal, emergency. So see, like this baby, she's in a very active state of exertion. So what happens? Just imagine you are under attack, right? You show up for an exam and you are not prepared. So what happens is you are very stressed out. So you have heightened metabolic rate, heightened mental alertness. Your brain is like, firing neurons. You're thinking, you're under high alert. What if somebody attacks you in a dark alley? You either stand there and fight off the intruder or you run for your life. So what happens is your metabolic rate, metabolism, which is cellular respiration, and every cell will increase so that you can break down glucose and make ATP, and then you have more energy to fuel your skeletal muscles. So when you are running away from danger, your body is not going to spend energy in for digestion or urination. All those activities are kind of put on hold. All the energy reserves from your muscles, glycogen in the muscles, or even your fat cells, they are all activated. So you're imagining a very stressful situation. You're running for your life, right? So think about all the things that's happening in your body. You are going to breathe deeply. Your respiratory rate is going to increase. That means there's going to be vasodilation. All the tubes in your lungs are going to dilate so you can gulp in more oxygen to break down the glucose to produce ATP. Another thing you're familiar with is when you are in fear or stressed out, your heart rate increases. Your heart starts to pump. You can feel it pound in your chest. So your blood pressure increases. And how does that happen? By vasoconstriction. All the arteries will constrict. Another side effect of stress is sweat glands. Your palms start to sweat and your whole body is sweating. So these are some of the main things that are happening in a fight or flight response during stress, emergency, exertion, arousal. And there's another picture that is showing what's happening to the body. Some neurotransmitters are released. Your blood flow is released through the body. Digestion and urination slows down. You're breaking down glucose for making ATP. and your brain is so active. The opposite of this would be the parasympathetic nervous system. So here's the baby. So this is how you feel when you've done all your work and you're going to go to bed at night. You are going to sleep, you're going to take rest, and then this is when digestion and urination happens. All those will happen at its peak activity then. So your metabolic rate slows down. You can feel your heart beating very rhythmically. Your blood pressure drops. There is increased salivary gland production. Salivary glands will make a lot of saliva. That is important for digestion. So that's why, like when you wake up after a good night's sleep, you are drooling because the saliva is running out of your mouth, because that was a good sleep. You digested your food well. That's why people say when you are stressed, your endocrine glands don't work well. Your digestive glands don't work well. You're constipated. Stress is very bad for the human body when it's extensive, when it's for a long period of time. There is increased blood flow to the digestive tract. So you're going to urinate well and you're going to defecate well. So acronym for this is SLUDD, S-L-U-D-D, increased salivation, lacrimation, your tear ducts. That's why you can see tears in your eyes sometimes. Increased urination, digestion, and defecation. So parasympathetic is the opposite of sympathetic. You are calm. So we'll see the physiology of it, the anatomy and the physiology of it. So here, this is a slide where you can spend more time on it later. For example, in the sympathetic mode, your eyes will dilate when you're afraid. In parasympathetic, it will constrict. In sympathetic, your mouth is very dry. It inhibits the flow of saliva. Whereas in parasympathetic, your mouth is nice and moist, and salivation is very good for digestion. In sympathetic, your heart is very relaxed and it's breathing rhythmically, whereas in sympathetic, it's going to pump a lot of blood. There'll be vasoconstriction and your blood pressure is high, and so forth. So the sympathetic is going to speed things up and the parasympathetic is going to calm all your internal organs. So that's why both of them go hand in hand. That's why they play such a huge role in homeostasis. So let's look at the organization of the sympathetic nervous system. So you can see the sympathetic nervous system is going to leave the central nervous system from the thoracic vertebrae T1 and lumbar vertebrae L2. That's why it is also called thoracolumbar division. So that's where the nerves are going to exit the central nervous system. And then we saw there is a ganglion. The neuron before the ganglion is called preganglionic neuron. The neuron after the ganglia is called as postganglionic neuron. The preganglionic neuron is usually very short. It's a neuron or fiber, 2 words for it. It's short, whereas the postganglionic neuron is long. Here in the ganglia, so the ganglia are found on either side of the spinal cord. It's called paravertebral. It is paired. So there is 3 of them. There's sympathetic chain ganglia, which is paired. Collateral ganglia is unpaired. And it can also go to the adrenal medulla. This is on top of the kidneys, which is also paired. The collateral will serve your abdominal region. Above the diaphragm, sympathetic chain ganglia is common. So after the synapses, the postganglionic fibers will go to the target organs. The sympathetic ganglia goes to the visceral effectors in the thoracic cavity above the diaphragm, head, the body wall, and the limbs. The collateral ganglia is going to innervate visceral effectors in the abdominopelvic cavity. And then the adrenal medulla, when it pumps out its neurotransmitters, will enter the bloodstream, and then it will serve all the organs. It will go throughout the body. So here's the sympathetic nervous system. It is also called thoracolumbar system. It's exiting the central nervous system from the thoracic region T1 to L2. It has very short preganglionic fibers and a very long postganglionic fiber. The cell bodies will be found in the lateral gray horns in the spinal cord. And the axons will enter the ventral roots of the segments. So on either side of the vertebrae, you can see these bunches of cell bodies. They are called as the chain ganglia. It looks like a chain. So the ganglionic neurons are found near the vertebral column. And they're going to innervate neurons of the cervix, this region, cervical region, and inferior lumbar region. So the spinal nerves from T1 to L2, their sympathetic preganglionic fibers will join the ventral root of each spinal nerve. They will join the ventral root of each spinal nerve. So we have all these nerves that are going to the different organs of your body. So short and long. On the contrary, the parasympathetic nerves will leave the central nervous system from the cranium and the sacral region, where you're seeing the blue. So it's going to leave from the midbrain, the pons, the medulla oblongata. So this is where the parasympathetic nuclei are. And then you can see all these nerves that some of them we studied in AP1. The nerve 3, the most important would be number 10, which is the intramural, means on the wall of the organ. So you can see the nerve 10 is going to innervate the visceral organs of your neck, thoracic cavity, and most of the abdominal region here. So the parasympathetic nerves are also called craniosacral, cranium and sacral, right? So it's called craniosacral. Again, opposite to the sympathetic nerves, these will have very long preganglionic and short postganglionic. The second one is very close to the target organ. The second ganglion is very, very close to the target organ. So you can see how it's leaving the brain in the cranium, and then it's going to leave in the sacral region. And the first nerve, the preganglionic fiber is very, very long, and the postganglionic is very, very short. The preganglionic neurons in the brain stem, and it's found in S2 to S4 here, sacrum. The ganglia are located inside the target organ itself, or it's found very close to the target organ. The neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. All right, let's compare the neurotransmitters of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So here in the sympathetic nervous system, the preganglionic neuron is lightly myelinated. You can see how it's slightly myelinated. And in the sympathetic, the first neurotransmitter is acetylcholine. So the receptor should be a cholinergic receptor. So it's the receptor that is going to respond to acetylcholine that is found in the postganglionic neuron. And the second neuron in the target organ is norepinephrine. The sympathetic neurons also innervate the adrenal medulla. So adrenal glands are the kidneys. Another word, it's called suprarenal gland. So it has a cortex and a medulla. So from the medulla, it can release neurotransmitters epinephrine and norepinephrine. They used to be called adrenaline, the adrenaline rush, the excitement rush when you go on a roller coaster. These are the normal current words that we use for it, epinephrine and norepinephrine. When the adrenal medulla secretes, so it's a endocrine gland also. It will secrete the hormones directly into the blood. So what happens is it will affect a lot of target organs. So the target organs for the autonomic nervous system is your smooth muscles in the gut, all your glands, and your cardiac muscle. It can either stimulate or inhibit, depending on the neurotransmitter and the type of receptor it's going to act upon, and also the location in the body. So we have lightly myelinated, and the postganglionic is unmyelinated. In sympathetic, the preganglionic neuron is lightly myelinated. It uses acetylcholine as the neurotransmitter, and also acetylcholine in the target organ as an effector in the effector. So here you can see the second neuron is also unmyelinated like this. So the post-ganglionic sympathetic neurons will release the neurotransmitter norepinephrine, and the post-ganglionic parasympathetic neuron will release the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. And these are the effector organs. So this is kind of a very good summary slide. See, when we studied ANP1 and we went over the somatic nervous system, you remember this structure of the neuron, right? The cell body with all the dendrites, and we studied this long axon, which is heavily myelinated so that it can speed up the action potential. And then we studied the neurotransmitter at the synapses, at the neuromuscular junction that can evoke a muscle to contract, like how it stimulated a muscle to contract. So we saw this. So now it's similar and different here. Here it's only one neuron, whereas in the autonomic, there are two neurons. We have the pre and the post, and then we have a whole range of neurotransmitters. Every organ in the body cannot always be in a state of excitement, right? It has to come back to normal. So if you just think about a time when your heart was pounding, you were so afraid, your heart was jumping in your chest. And then after a while, when the situation was overcome, your heart calms down. So let's just take the heart. So we have when there's more than one, they'll call it a plexus, a whole bunch of nerves. So that control the heart. So each organ in your body is under the control of both the sympathetic nerve and the parasympathetic nerve. If one is going to speed it up, the other one will calm it down. So all the vital organs in our body are going to be innervated by both the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. Both the systems are going to have opposite effects. Homeostasis is the balance between the two systems. Every organ is going to be innervated by both these nerves. That is why it is called dual innervation. For example, your heart is going to receive both sympathetic and parasympathetic nerve. The sympathetic will make your heart beat faster, and your parasympathetic will calm it down. And you can see most of the parasympathetic action is bicranial nerve number 10. It's also called as the vagus nerve. Remember this. It's going to act on your heart, calming your heart. It will also act on your lungs, your respiration, calming your breathing. And then you can see how it's also innervating so many other organs. That's why it's a very important nerve. Let's talk about the receptors in the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. So here is a cell membrane. So this is the signal transduction pathway that you studied in Principles of Biology and in ANP1. So the sympathetic nervous system is going to use the neurotransmitter epinephrine and norepinephrine. They used to be called as adrenaline and adrenaline. So there are 5 receptors that can respond to these ligand. So any signaling molecule that sits on a receptor protein is called as a ligand. So when norepinephrine finds its receptor, the receptor is called alpha receptor, found in the plasma membrane. It can evoke 2 types of response in the cell. Alpha 1 receptors will activate second messengers that release calcium in the endoplasmic reticulum, and it will evoke smooth muscle contraction and glands secreting something. So this is the action. So alpha 1 will stimulate. See, it's stimulating the action, whereas alpha 2 receptor will inhibit cell metabolism. There's another receptor called beta receptor, and there's 3 subcategories in them, beta 1, beta 2, and beta 3. The beta 1 will stimulate the cardiac muscle and increase cellular metabolism. 2, just like 2 that we saw in alpha, it is going to inhibit or relax the muscle, relax smooth muscles of your respiratory system. The third one will trigger metabolism of your fatty acid to make energy. So these are called adrenergic receptors. It came from the word adrenaline, the old word, because they are responding to adrenaline. So in adrenergic receptors, we have alpha and beta, and we have subcategories for each one of them. So if you've heard drugs such as, oh, it's an alpha blocker, beta blocker, this is where it's coming from. So here, see, it says alpha receptors are mostly involved in the stimulation of the effector cell and constriction of blood vessels. Whereas the beta receptors are involved in the relaxation of the effector cell and the dilation of blood vessels. Here is the parasympathetic nervous system receptors. So here, this is going to use acetylcholine as the neurotransmitter. The receptor that it's going to receive this ligand is either a nicotinic receptor or muscarinic receptor. Why are they named so? Because they were discovered, nicotine from cigarettes. You know, that chemical triggered this receptor. And muscarine is a chemical from mushrooms. So here you can see when acetylcholine finds the receptor in the cell membrane, it is going to open a sodium channel that will cause depolarization. Or it can also act through a G protein. An inactive G protein gets activated, and then it will trigger the second messengers in a cell, thereby affecting the cell or causing changes in the cell. This is a summary slide of all the receptors that we just talked about. For example, alpha 1 adrenergic receptor is found in almost all the tissues in your body. And what does that do? It excites or stimulates metabolism. And how does it work? It's by enzyme activation and by intracellular release of second messengers such as calcium. We'll take one example of nicotinic. Where is that found? It is found in all the autonomic synapses between the preganglionic and the ganglionic neurons. And they work by opening sodium channels. So a nicotinic receptor is a channel protein. That
Professor?
when it finds, yes?
We only see the sympathetic receptor screen. We don't see a different slide.
Hold on. Do you see it now?
No. Yep.
Sorry.
That's okay.
All right. You know what? The answers are here. So this is like a summary slide. So what we've studied so far is autonomic nervous system is under subconscious control. You can't control your heart and your digestion and your internal organs. So, for example, if you take your kidneys, sympathetic will decrease your kidney function, whereas parasympathetic is going to increase your kidney function. So this is the summary slide. All right. Welcome back. Did you all get a chance to say hi to each other?
Yes.
Unmute yourself.
Yes.
Who ran away? A few of you ran away.
I was very
confusing at
confused.
first. Yeah. Me too.
You're learning now. This is how they connect in Zoom. So every class, the last 15 to 20 minutes will be students in group studies. So now you can tell me what you didn't understand.
The only thing I didn't understand, I just didn't know if your class cut out or like
Yes.
we just randomly like were in a group, so I didn't know if like I don't know, I didn't know if like we lost connection or something, but that's it. I
You
think
didn't see each other?
we've seen each other, but I felt like I missed like a last part of your lesson or something. I don't know. Does anybody else feel that way? Like,
Yeah, the sound just went away.
like you were there 1 second, Professor, and then all of a sudden you were gone, and then like we were in a group, so I didn't know like what was going on, but we
What
talked.
was the last thing you remember, Amanda?
The summary.
So on Blackboard, there is a video I want you to watch. You know, there are so many lectures online that you can look up, but there is one doctor, his name is Jeff Heath. He kind of thinks the way I do, and he's very clear about things. So I have posted that video, okay? So read the chapter and go over the video. Is there anybody here who's confident to summarize what we learned today? Mohammed.
Yes, ma'am. I am confident, but I was just not paying attention. To be honest, I heard whatever you said.
Wow.
And everything. No, I mean,
Very honest.
lecture. It's just that when we went into the break room, I started worrying about the creates program more now, because I kind of participate in that too.
So there's not much of a, you know, for this week in this class, you just have to post on discussion board and do the visible body assignment, right?
Yeah, that's all. I already did the visible body thing.
Yeah, it's very low stakes this week. So you can concentrate on the creative, and Mohammed, don't make your professor anxious. He emailed me because he's such a sweet person, you know, he's totally committed to your success.
All right.
All right, guys, I just want to summarize what we learned quickly. So brain and the spinal cord and how it controls skeletal muscle, you studied last semester. If you don't remember it, kindly go over those chapters in the textbook. Look up what action potential is, what ganglia is, and so forth. So autonomic nervous system is the part of the nervous system that's controlling your viscera inside. It is not under our control. Sometimes it speeds things up, sometimes it slows it down. Autonomic, there are 3 divisions. However, we concentrated on the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. Sympathetic will speed things up. Short preganglionic fiber and long postganglionic fiber. It's a two nerve system. First receptor is acetylcholine. Second receptor is norepinephrine. Whereas in parasympathetic, both the receptors are acetylcholine. It will have a long preganglionic and short postganglionic. And then we studied the different neurotransmitters and the different receptors. Then we studied dual innervation, and then we summarized with a summary slide of the effect of the sympathetic and parasympathetic on the different organs. What you have to understand it, all this information, you won't be able to get it by reading the chapter once. You have to read it several times, at least 3-4 times before you understand. So I'll see you all next week. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye.
Bye-bye. Good day.
Yeah, you too. Have a good day.
Have a good day, Professor.
You as well.